So I am so excited to be here to talk with you about this topic of mentoring. I'm passionate about it. It's something I've been looking at for a number of years, and it's had a huge impact on my career. But I'm wondering about you. Is it just me, or how many of you would say that you also have had access to mentoring? You've been a mentor, or you have received mentoring? Raise your hands, please. Oh, great. Look at that. Okay. And then raise your hands again if you found it valuable. Found it great. Okay, and so you're with me then in terms of the importance of this topic. And so I want to do two things. One thing I want to do in my short time with you is talk about mentoring and some of what I've learned from my mentors. So I want to brag a little bit about my mentors. And my mentors are actually pretty special because each one of them I'm going to share a little bit with you about has actually contributed to the field of mentoring. So I want to talk about their research a tiny bit and what I've learned from them. And then the second thing that I want to do is talk with you about the question I get every time I talk on mentoring. How do I get my own mentor? Right? Everywhere I go, if I'm speaking about mentoring, at the end of the talk, somebody will come up to me and ask me that. Right? And so I thought about it, and I want to share a process that I've developed that I'm curious about your thoughts as well. Okay, so let's start with my mentors. But I'd have to say that the first one would be my mom. My mom. I thought she was the prettiest, the smartest, right, the strongest, and the most loving woman. She was a captain in the Air Force, and she's a nurse. And I learned from her that I could do anything, that I could be anything that I wanted to be, and she just passed that on to me. But it wasn't just my mom. It was certainly her sisters and brothers, my aunts and my uncles. And looking at them, this whole collective, this team, they taught me how to go on and want to get a doctorate, how I could think about becoming a professor, how I would join an organization that's dedicated to social service, how I would become the best bid whist player ever, right? And that is a challenge, that's right. So I have my mom, a nurse, a surgeon, a doctor, a lawyer, a social worker, and these were all my family members who, because of who they are, I turned out to be who I am. I would be remiss if I didn't include my husband, Vince Beard. I'd say he's one of my best mentors. He taught me that I could run races, right? And so we do 5Ks and 10Ks and even half marathons. I would say we run them, but we don't. He starts and we start together, and he's waiting for me at the end, right, to congratulate me. And so these mentors, we oftentimes don't hear about the role of family, but our family is really quite important. These are oftentimes our first mentors. Would you agree? Right. So I've had the benefit of this great family, but I've also had many, many professional mentors, and I want to share four with you. Now, Maya Angelou has a saying, and this saying is, when people tell you who they are, believe them the first time, right? Believe them the first time. And with each one of my mentors, as I met them, they told me something about themselves that resonated with me, that I wanted to keep, and that I wanted to make sure that I remembered. And so I'm going to talk with you about them and what it is that they gave me, what that thing is. And part of why I'm doing that is I'd like for you to think back and reflect on your own mentoring relationships. Like, remember what it is that drew you to the person. Remember what it is that you got, because that's valuable. Okay, so my first person I'm going to talk about is David Thomas. And David Thomas was spectacular as a mentor, right? And so the thing about David that resonated for me was his intellectual courage. David wrote a paper when I was a grad student, and he was new faculty, about mentoring across race and gender, and he talked about the impact of slavery on relationships in current organizations. I couldn't believe that he raised this very painful topic, right, that we don't talk about, and he talked about the current impact of this. Right? So I couldn't believe he talked about it. I couldn't believe it was published in a very good journal, actually. It's published in a mainstream journal, and I couldn't believe he still had his job after he did this, right? But he did, and I really appreciated the courage that it took to write that paper, to publish that paper, because that was not on any path of what you would need to do to get tenure at the prestigious institutions of which he was a part. It would actually be quite off of the path, and I appreciate that he did that because it was what he felt called to do, that was important to him. As a result of that, I read this very early in my graduate career. I decided that I wanted to look at the intersection of race and gender, and I wanted to look specifically at women of color and their mentoring experiences. And I think that I got that courage in part from seeing David and what he did. Faye Cosby is another one of my mentors, and you'll see I have them here with their books. Each one of the people I'm talking about has written extensively and contributed significantly to the field, but I want to share with you what they gave to me, because part of what they gave to me, other people are getting as well. And so Faye actually was really quite famous for her work on affirmative action. As that storm was brewing, Faye was a national expert on affirmative action. But as I got to know her in my graduate career, she was moving into studying mentoring. And so I was very excited to meet her because she runs these small conferences called NAG's Hearts. And I had been invited to a conference at her home in June of this particular year. She was the speaker at our MLK presentation, so in January at University of Michigan, go Blue, in the psych department. So I was going in January to meet Faye, and I was so excited to meet this scholar whose house I was going to be visiting later that year. So Faye got in front of the room, and it was pretty packed. She's a very well-known social psychologist, and she stood up in this front of this crowd, and she said, the reason that I do research on social justice and equity is because I want the world to be a better place for my two sons. And she had a picture of her two children that she was holding up in front of this whole crowd, right? And so for me, Faye was a warrior for equity. That's what stood out for me about Faye. She was a warrior for equity. And she was willing to do it in a way that wasn't popular at the time. The message that I was getting as a grad student was just put down your head and work. Just finish your degree, get a job, get tenure, and then worry about having a family, right? And so seeing Faye up there holding that picture was inspiring, and it gave me hope that I could do both, that I could have a career and be an academician that was respected, but that I could also have a family, that I could be a scholar and a mom at the same time. And so that's what Faye gave me. And I want to say thank you to Faye and thank you to David. The next person is Kathy Cram. And Kathy Cram is a luminary in the field of mentoring. I call her the mother of mentoring. Her dissertation work in this subsequent book shaped the field. If you look any place in any discipline, you're going to see her cited because her work was so germinal, right? So Kathy gave us, in her explanation of mentoring, the phases of mentoring and the stages of mentoring, and a really nuanced understanding of that through her qualitative research, right? So when I had a chance to meet her, I was kind of in shock for the first 15, 20 minutes that I was sitting with Cram. What I really appreciated is that Kathy asked me so many questions, she really listened. And the characteristic of hers that stood out for me was her appreciative inquiry. She asked so many questions. Now here she is, one of the top people in the field, and she's asking me, so where do you want to go, Stacy? What do you want to do? What's your research interest? What are you scared of? I'll never forget her asking me that. What are you scared of? And so I'm in this space with this star, and she's focused on me. I thought that ability to have this appreciative inquiry, to ask these questions, was a skill that I wanted to make sure that I took with me in any relationship, that I was going to be the mentor, that I wanted to make somebody feel the way that she made me feel, respected and heard and appreciated. Right? And so that's what Kathy gave to me, and I'd like to say thank you to her. And the last duo that I'm going to talk about are Estella and Belle. And these two dynamic ladies are what I would call sisters in scholarship. And there were two things about them that really stood out for me. One is the way that they hold each other in terms of doing this work, that they're pushing new frontiers, and that they really support each other. And I watched that. So how I met them is that we were all going to our major conference, the major management conference. And I was a brand new doctoral student, but I knew somebody who knew them, and I'd gotten an invitation to have breakfast with them. As the date, and I did this months in advance, right? So as the date approached, we're in Miami Beach, and they call me up and they say they can't meet, they can't go to breakfast because they have a symposium and they just can't stop working. But they didn't want to cancel. So when I come to their room, and they'll work, but they'll talk with me. I was like, sure, why not? Sure. So I go to their room, and the minute I walk in, there's electricity in the air. They are passing notes back and forth. They're editing. They are sharpening their comments. They are laughing at times because they know they're about to really blow things up with some of their comments that they're going to make and how they're going to push things. They push the boundaries. And I just sat there and I watched them. And I was kind of in awe watching these two. I would call them provocateurs. They were the provocateurs. They were the people who were going to provoke. They were going to push the norms. They were going to challenge the boundaries, right? These would be the two who would say, the emperor has no clothes on, right? And then they would say, and by the way, put on your drawers, okay? Put on some clothes here, right? And then they would say, yeah, we said that, okay? Just willing to push the boundaries in ways that I just so admired and respected. And so watching them and also seeing two senior Black women in a field and discipline where you didn't see many of us was just so inspiring to me, so inspiring. Okay, so I had the benefit of each one of those mentors. And the interesting thing is that I formed those relationships 25 years ago, 30 years ago, as I was a grad student, all during my grad career, but I'm still in touch with every single one of them. They're just a phone call away or a lunch date away, and they're still a resource for me. And I think now that I'm a resource for them as well, right? So that's great that they're still there, that there's this longevity that comes when you do mentoring well. Would you agree with that? Yeah, it doesn't just disappear. It doesn't just go away. But I would be remiss if I said that I only got support from the folks up here. I also have a group of people right here by my side, right, who I would call my peer mentors, my posse, my tribe, my group of folks who have kept me whole. And this is not an exhaustive list, but these are 4 women with whom I've done a great deal of publishing, a great deal of work, and who've taught me through our mentoring of one another different things. So Regina O'Neill is in the top, and she and I both went to Michigan. We both did our dissertations on mentoring. We both survived. We both survived, right? We still laugh at how we got through, how sometimes we'd be walking around Ann Arbor trying to figure out where we were, right? But we both survived and do a lot of work together. Audrey Morell, my colleague in the right-hand corner, is a sister scholar who has paved the way in terms of her research. And I've learned so much from her, and she's taken me so many places. And the 2 colleagues at the bottom, Mary Shapiro and Cynthia Ingalls, are with me at Simmons College. And I watched them as I moved over from Harvard to Simmons and how they work together. And they're another model of a collaboration that is both beneficial and joyful in terms of how effective and productive it is. These 4 women all gave me models of mentoring, of peer mentoring, of support that we need to have, those people beside us. And each one of them is dear and treasure to me. They help me with my work, but most of all, they have a piece of my soul that they're holding. Okay, so I would say that we're clear on, the benefits of mentoring and how important this is. And so I really would like for us to think about, wow, when mentoring is really good, this is how it feels. Like you just see this beach, and I don't know about you, but I'm relaxed now, right? I'm laid back. I have my daiquiri in my hand, and I've got a good steamy book, and I'm just relaxed right now. This is how really good mentoring makes you feel, just relaxed, right? It also is this really good mentoring, that change, the transition, the change in seasons, right? The beautiful, brilliant colors, the fact that you have these this unexpected delights at what you see, and yet you know that this is coming because this is a ritual of time. That's what mentoring is. Mentoring is also this, like the changing of the leaves. I also see mentoring as this way of looking at things from alternative perspectives. And so, as you heard in the intro, I do work in India. And every time I go to India, I'll try to take somebody different with me. And if I bring somebody who hasn't been, I say, well, you have to go see the Taj Mahal. You must go see it. Right? It's a beautiful monument, and the pictures don't even do it justice. I like this picture, but it doesn't even do it justice. When you walk through the gate and you see it, it takes your breath away, right? So this is the picture we always see, the Taj Mahal, this front-on picture. But one time I was there, I've been, about 5 or 6 times, and I went to the side of the Taj Mahal, and I laid down in the courtyard there, and I took this picture. And it's the same building, but it's this totally different perspective. I love the way that the light is playing there. The sun is in a different place, the shadow, the geometry of the building. And it's a totally different view from the view that I just showed you, yet they're both valuable. And that's what I see mentoring as doing, is giving us these alternative perspectives, giving us this different way of looking at things. And then there's just sometimes you feel on top of the world, right? On top of the world, as if when you do mentoring, you do it well. And it's not always easy. So this is the Delicate Arch at the Arches Park out in Utah. And I have to tell you, by the time I got there, I couldn't breathe. I was trying to keep everything together. I was like, oh my gosh, it's going straight up and it's not stopping. And but I did. I kept going. I kept persevering and got to the top. And you're on top of the world. And that's how mentoring is too. Sometimes that's what it is. It's a little challenging. It's going up. It's rocky. You don't know that the hard part is going to end. And then you get there. And it's exhilarating. Okay, so these are all these different ways of thinking about mentoring and actually how it feels. And I like the pictures because I think they evoke different things than the words. And so this is the second part, how is it that you get a mentor, right? I have people ask me all the time, should I just go up to somebody and say, will you be my mentor? I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, actually that does work. I've seen it work, but it can be a bit daunting for people, right? The thing that we have the least amount of is time. That's our scarcest resource right now. And so when somebody comes up and says, will you be my mentor? They're asking for your time and your energy and your social capital. And you have to decide, do you want to give that, right? And so I don't say don't do that. It can be daunting for some folks. I do say that there's a process that I have thought about that allows you to invite somebody in. It's a little bit more gentle. It's a bit more graduated. It gives you a bit more time, right? So there's 6 steps, and I want to share those 6 steps with you. Okay, so the first step is just self-reflection. It's just sitting with yourself and being clear about what is it that you want. What are your goals? You'd be surprised at how many people don't know their goals. Either they just finished something or they're just not quite sure, right? And so what is it that you want? And not only that, what do you bring to the table? What are you good at? Where are your developmental opportunities? How's your emotional intelligence? How's your relational intelligence, right? What do you bring to the table that will be attractive to somebody to want to work with you? And what do you want to get done? Right, so that's the first step. Now you have to figure out how to do this in a way that makes sense for you. I do mine at spas. I do mine at a spa about every 6 months. I hit a nice spa. I don't go for little spas. I go for beautiful spas. And I get there and I have a massage and then I journal. And then I'll get a scrub, and then I do some mapping, right? Then I go take a soak, and then I eat lunch, and then I set my goals, and then I go to bed because I'm tired after all of that thinking, right? And I do that about every 6 months. So if you want to know a good spa, feel free to reach out to me. I know beautiful spas here and in India. You really have to do it in the way that makes sense for you, right? In the way that makes sense for you. How do you self-reflect? How do you make sure that you're aware of what you're bringing to the table and where it is that you want to go? So once you do that, then you put your network into action and you do a survey of the landscape to figure out, so who can help me? Who would it be that I want to help me reach this goal that I identified as self-reflection, right? And it's surprising. We think that it might be hard to reach people. They say that we're 6 degrees separated, but it's really fewer than that. If you leverage your network, you can get connected to just about anybody if you really leverage your network, right? So you want to do your homework and think about, who is it that I need to speak with? Who is it that I need to connect with? Once you do that, get on their calendar. Get on their calendar. Actually get the date. Now, what does that look like? It's different depending on who you are and who the person is. Getting on the calendar could be going for a walk. Getting on the calendar could be a lunch date. Getting on the calendar could be an informational interview. Getting on the calendar could be breakfast. It could be any number of things, right? You want to see what works for you and try to project what works for this person that you want to connect with, and try to make it as easy for that person as possible. Does that make sense? You want to make it as easy for them as possible so that they're more likely to say yes. Once you do that and you get that meeting, when you go in, use inquiry and listen. People actually like to talk. They don't even need that much prompting. Just ask the right questions. When I go in to a meeting like this, I always have a short agenda. I have 1 or 2 questions that I want to ask, and I have a goal that I share with them so that I can get their feedback. That's it. That's it, right? So you don't need a very short agenda, and then let them talk. They appreciate it. They actually appreciate the opportunity to share and to give back. So use inquiry and then listen. Once it's over, now this is me, I'm biased. Nobody sends real thank you cards anymore. And I think real thank you cards are an art. Our grandchildren are not going to know what thank you cards are. They're not going to know what snail mail is because everything's going to be electronic. But there's something about a card, a handheld card, that speaks to a thoughtfulness, a care, a tenderness, that somebody's taken the time to really think about what they want to say to you. And so I use cards. Now, of course, you have to do it the way that makes sense for you. So if it's not a real thank you card, figure out what it is, but say thank you. Do follow up and say thank you to the person for taking the time to sit down with you. And then the last step is to follow up after that. So in my thank you card, I say, thank you so much for taking time to sit down with me. I appreciated your perspective on X. I'm going to use what you said to help me with my goal of Y. Would you mind if I got back in touch with you again in 3 months or so to follow up and let you know how I use that information? And then I follow up and set that next appointment. You do that a couple times and you can call this person and they'll make time for you no matter what's going on. Right? It actually ends up that it's a cycle, right? If you do this, it actually becomes a cycle that you can just repeat. The interesting thing about this is you don't just have to use it for mentoring relationships. You can use it for all kinds of relationships. I think mentoring is great professional development for all kinds of leadership behaviors, right? And so it's this cycle that you can use as you're transitioning in all kinds of ways and that you can use with all kinds of relationships. And so when mentoring works really well, it actually sets you up for this network. Your mentors actually become part of a network. And this is a slide, a picture that I took in Albuquerque, New Mexico for the balloon festival. It's the largest balloon ascension in the world. And I love this picture because there's so much buzz at this event. This is a glow where the balloons stay on the ground and they just light them up. They count down and they light them up. It is so amazing, right? And your mentors are like these big bees here. They're up, they're elevated a bit. They have a view of the landscape that we can't all see. They're interlinked and they have their arms out and they're kind of waiting and saying, come, right? And so I like this slide as a way to help us think about mentors as part of a network, that they're part of a larger network. But I don't want to diminish or rule out or in some way have you not think that mentoring is not critical. It's so important. It's what I've spent my life doing. And so I'm going to close with this quote from my favorite author, Audre Lorde. It says, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. And mentors help you with all of this. They help you to understand and own your power. They help you to analyze and be aware of your strengths. Right? They help you to clarify and be sure of your vision and to use your voice in that regard. And they help you to be less afraid. I know my mentors have, right? And so I love this quote from Audre Lorde as a way to help us think about the power of mentoring as a transformational process. And thank you so much.